Can you hear me now? Cool. All right, today is July 13th and our meeting is about to begin, Olivet City Hall. Can we please have roll call?
Councilmember Carl,
Absent with excuse.
Councilmember Waldman,
Here.
Councilmember Springer.
Here. Not Springer, you're
Oh.
not Springer.
Absent with excuse.
It's been a long day.
Chairman Pro Tem Weil,
Here.
If that's who she is.
Mayor.
I'm here too.
Okay. Item number 2 is communications. Mayor, we have no written communications. However, we have 3 new employees with us this evening.
Ooh, okay.
Mayor, I'd like to start with the introduction. I'm going to have our Assistant Park and Rec Director, Don LaChance, introduce our new Recreation Coordinator. Corey, you can come up too.
Good evening, council members. I'd like to introduce straight from Kansas, Corey Shovik. He's our new sports coordinator and jumping right in with soccer full force. So
Thank you, Don. Yeah, as you said, I'm straight from Kansas. Excited to, well, I've been here for about 5 weeks now, so we're diving into soccer, getting some camps also lined up and getting those ready to go. And I'm looking forward to meeting everybody from the community, working with everyone in the community, and always taking feedback. So if you have any suggestions on sports you'd like to see us maybe introduce and get going, please let me know. Thank you.
I have one question for you. Are you a Jayhawk fan?
I am. I
Ah,
am. Yeah, that's the one thing. Yeah.
Corey has to leave now.
Yeah, I have to leave. So
And if
Thank
one
you,
of the
guys.
officers could help him to his car.
That 90-day probation went down to 9. So welcome. It is. Welcome. Glad to have you. If you will kindly raise your right hand. I
I, Stephanie Schrum,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess all the qualifications to serve as police officer for the city of Olivet,
that I possess all qualifications to serve as police officer for the city of Olivet,
St. Louis County, Missouri.
St. Louis County, Missouri.
Okay, we're almost through. And that I will support the Constitution of the United States
And I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Missouri
and the state of Missouri
and the charter and ordinance of the city of Olivet.
and the charter and ordinance of the city of Olivet.
Doing good. And that I will faithfully discharge
And I will faithfully discharge
the duties and of this office
the duties of this office
by abiding by law enforcement code ethics, code of
by
ethics.
abiding by the code of ethics.
Okay. As a police officer,
As a police officer,
my fundamental duty is to ensure that Olivet Police Department. Come on, let me stop. As a police officer,
as a police officer,
my fundamental duty
my fundamental duty
is to ensure that
is to ensure that
the Olivet Police Department
the Olivet Police Department
serves the community,
serves the community,
protect the innocent,
protect the innocent,
and respect the constitutional rights of all.
and respect the constitutional rights of all.
Go ahead. I understand that it is my responsibility
I understand that it is my responsibility
and duty to enforce the law
and duty to enforce the law
courteously,
courteously,
appropriately,
appropriately,
without fear or favor,
without fear or favor,
malice or ill will,
malice or ill will,
never employing unnecessary force or violence.
never employing unnecessary force or violence.
I recognize the badge of my office
I recognize the badge of my office
as a symbol of public faith,
as a symbol of public faith
and I accept it as public trust
and accept it as public trust
to be held and honored.
to be held in honor.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're going to have one of her young constituents go ahead and put that on this young lady. And if you would turn around so we can get a picture of you. Didn't get any blood. Congratulations. Anyone that just wants to come up, take a picture with you, they can. Come on, family. Everybody, come on up, take pictures. It's a proud moment.
Officer Strong comes to us from Rockdale. He was previously an officer in Rockdale, which is a community that's very similar to Olivet, a little bit smaller, but he was very, very loved in the city of Rockdale. They were sad to see her go, and we are very excited to have her on our staff. She's very community oriented, and so we are lucky to have her.
Okay. And so the audience disappears. All right, I'll be working with you soon. Okay, the second act. Is Brian still in the house? Welcome, young man. If you would please raise your right hand, sir. I
I, Brian Beard,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess all the qualifications
that I possess all the qualifications
prescribed by law
prescribed by law
for the position of
for the position of firefighter, paramedic
for the city of Olivet,
for the city of Olivet,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Missouri,
and the state of Missouri,
the provisions of all laws,
the provisions of all laws
for the state of Missouri,
for the state of Missouri,
affecting the city of Olivet,
affecting the city of Olivet,
and the ordinance of the city of Olivet,
and the ordinance of the city of Olivet,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
as a firefighter slash paramedic.
as a firefighter slash paramedic.
Congratulations. All right, I'm his family right now. Yes.
Brian is a recent
Come on in, get a
graduate of
picture.
St. Louis County Academy. Been a paramedic for 3 years.
Listen to the boss.
So I got a story, just a quick little story. When I had Brian's badge to give him, I went out to the engine room and I was looking around because Brian is always around the trucks, working. And I found him, and I handed him his badge. He asked me, he goes, "Can I have a moment?" and stepped away. It touches me to know that we have somebody that cares about the fire service so much that he needed a moment.
Congratulations. Yes, Barb is doing it right now. I'll put my
If there
glasses-
is anyone in the community rooms, the main chamber is now has some seats for sale. Cheap.
Did I do okay? Okay.
It's very nice to have new employees who come with that excitement and they want to be here, and it's really great. Very happy with those 3 new hires. So I will just go ahead with my report. As everyone knows, Saturday about 12:40 a.m. 12 o'clock, we had a storm blow in, actually started a little before that, got really bad around there, around that time. And between on Saturday from 12:40 a.m. to about 4:20 a.m., the Olivet Fire Department responded to 31 calls for assistance. Most of those were due to the high winds, down trees and power lines. And then when they thought it was done at about 4:30 in the afternoon, that 10:30 that same day, they responded to a residential fire. Needless to say, it was a very, very busy time for the Olivet Police Department, or Fire Department, sorry. The police department too was busy assisting on these calls and attempting to keep roadways clear. The Olivet Public Works Department was called in on Saturday to start the removal of debris and trees from the roadways. That prioritization came, there were a couple of roads that the residents couldn't get through and they were dead end roads. So those take priority and then they start moving to the other bigger trees. So it took a while for them to get by, open up all the roads. The Olivet Park and Recreation Department had staff. I think we had Don and LaChance, who you saw earlier, and a couple of other folks who came in on Saturday, because we also had a lot of debris and trees down at the parks. They started that work. You may have noticed then on Monday, we had someone cleaning up trees in the parks too, and grinding them up. And I guess and then actually after that, when you have these situations, when you have a fire like that, one of the things I don't have up here is the building department gets called in to assess structural integrity of buildings. So it was a busy weekend for everybody. And I point this out because it takes a team of people to keep things running. And I realize now one of the entities I don't have on here is dispatch, who is dispatching for the 8 municipalities within East Central Dispatch Center. And so you can imagine how busy the phone lines were that night. So I think all in all, we did a pretty good job. We have a couple of few pictures that were taken of some of the trees, some of the cleanup work that occurred. And then these are a couple of pictures from the fire, from the residential home fire. So I just wanted to kudos to the Olivet emergency responders on a job well done. On other things going on, Happy New Year. It's the new fiscal year, started July 1, FY21. And as you know, FY21 is now the calendar year, July 1, 2021 marks the start of our fiscal year 2022. We have a new camp option this year that was just started advertising for campers. It's Municipals Camp. It is a behind the scenes adventure with police, fire, public works, and parks. So the kids will get to go play on different equipment. They'll be shown things that happen. You will notice that finance and planning are not on here, and I think we all know why. Aw, sorry, Carlos. Camp O is going to be ending at the end of this month. We've had a really successful run. Every week has been full, and we've had no incidents. So it's been a good good summer of camp. Soccer registration is open. You heard Corey speak about that a little bit. Practices are going to begin on August 14th. We're planning for the return of Party in the Park. It's scheduled for September 10th from 6 to 9 p.m. There will be live music. So we're kind of looking at that as just a hopefully it'll be a safe and enjoyable evening for people as we kind of get back to a new normal. And then just to remind folks that we have an opening on their Planning and Community Design Commission, and you may apply online. You may have driven by Olive and Dealman and seen the work going on in the southeast corner. That's where the new Firestone is going to be. Veterans Fountain everything's been removed. Olivet and Bloom much earlier in the year actually moved their plants, replanted them elsewhere. So the beautiful plantings that were there have been saved. But below, this is now the design for the Veterans Fountain that's going to be rebuilt on that area in conjunction with Firestone. Work continues on the new planning and the design and the engineering for the new community center in Warson Park. We've held additional meetings with some of those. As the council's aware, you've approved these agreements with some of the specialties, audio and visual, fitness room design, and then you'll be seeing the playground equipment company recommendation come forward probably at your next meeting. And while we had released the general contract bid package on July 1, we did make the decision last week to recall the packet, and we'll be re-releasing it in the next 3 to 4 weeks. We found a couple of errors that needed to be corrected and some incomplete information after it was released. So we'll be re-advertising that in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Well, just if you can believe it or not, we have been planning for the 2021 Olivet Turkey Trot since about February. And it will be on November 25th. That's Thanksgiving morning. We will be in person this year. That is the plan. And but we will also have a virtual component. Virtual components can be, anyone can do the virtual component, but we do actually we've maintained the cycle options for folks. And we also do have some other different runs that people can do if you either don't feel comfortable doing in person, or if you happen to be out of town. Registration will open on August 1st. Tomorrow is Mayor Clark's first coffee with the mayor. His guests will be Great Rivers Greenway. They're going to be talking about the Centennial Greenway and the various phases and aspects of that. And then the Olivet Finance Director, Darren Mann, will also be joining the mayor to talk briefly about where we think we're ending, where we think we've ended in fiscal year 21, and where we anticipate going, more focused on the future, where we anticipate going in this new fiscal year that we just started. And again, that too will be in person, and it'll also be by Zoom, and go to the website and you can find that link. Upcoming events, I said, coffee with the mayor. We have a Planning and Community Design Commission meeting, July 15th, Park and Recreation, July 21st. The next regular city council meeting will be July 27th. They're scheduled a public meeting for the park renovations and that's going to be live and in person to talk about where we are with the parks. But that we may be having to change the date. Our park director, Beverly Tucker Knight, is going to be out of town for a variety of reasons, I will be out of town. So we're going to be discussing that. That all just happened within about 30 minutes before this meeting. So, so we'll be letting people know about that. And then the August 3rd will be the city council work session. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Comments, concerns, and just to note that I'm going to pan out so that people can see that Councilmember Carl is with us. Okay. All right, I'm done.
Item number 4, city council reports.
Ms. Walton, you have anything to report?
Mr. Mayor, I have nothing to report. My meeting comes up shortly. You all get the report from Mr. Trejo from the work session. That's sufficient. Thank you.
Ms. Wow.
I have not attended any additional meetings since our last meeting.
Ms. Carl.
I attended the Board of Adjustment meeting last Thursday. As Ms. Waldman said, Mr. Trejo does a wonderful job of making a summation of that, so I don't think we need to do it. It was a request for a variance on building placement to build another garage or build an additional garage on the house for handicapped reasons, for disabled reasons. Anyway, thank you.
I have no reports either. However, I'm looking forward to seeing everyone tomorrow morning. And at this time, if we have any citizens who would like to step forward and for any comments or concerns.
Mayor, I am looking online for those attending via Zoom, and I do not see any hands raised. If you would like to talk, oh, here's one, okay. And I will remind people that there is a public hearing on 2 items tonight, and if they're going to comment on those items, they may want to wait for the actual public hearing so that it can be part of the record. Mark Minton, I'm going to promote you to panelist, if that's okay, Mayor.
Yes, it is.
Did I drop? Oh, there
Oh,
he
you
is.
got me.
Okay, yeah.
Hi, Mark Minton, 115 Stoneleigh Towers. And I just wanted to address regarding the, on the agenda tonight is to discuss the construction hours. And I would just like to, as a citizen, please request that you do not reduce the hours of operation for commercial noise to 6:30 a.m. The beeps are loud and it's quite frustrating. And early in the morning, the summer is just a frustration that I'd ask you do not submit us to. I'd be more than happy to suggest that we focus on the evening hours, which would be more beneficial for families and people working from home. Hope you can.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to move you back to an attendee. And go back, and we have one more hand. Alan, I'm going to be making you a panelist. Okay, if you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. My name is Alan Zacharias, and I'm also at 155 Stoneleigh Towers. I had seen the agenda for tonight, in which there was talk about the possibility of increasing the work hours, as Mark Minton mentioned, from 6:30 in the morning onward. I mean, I agree that everybody's health is important, but also our family's health is really important. You know, all of the majority of the houses that overlook that area have small kids who need a certain amount of sleep in order to be able to function appropriately and continue to learn and develop. So I would also encourage, for the sake of everybody and the residents of Olivet, to minimize the amount of early hour noise, and 6:30 seems way too early. And I understand that there's a health concern about the workers, but that could also be minimized by changing the work week or extending some other hours towards the afternoon, as Mark had mentioned, as opposed to earlier in the morning.
thank you. I'm going to be putting you back to an attendee. And I do not see any other hands raised, Mayor. So I think we can move on.
Item number 6, bill number 2952, an ordinance to amend the master development plan illustrated as Exhibit B1 under ordinance number 2765, an ordinance rezoning certain redevelopment area from MU Gateway I-170 Olive Boulevard, mixed-use Gateway District to Olivet Gateway Plaza Plan Development District, amending the city's zoning map accordingly, adopting a corresponding master development plan, and adopting pertinent land use and zoning regulations. Second reading and public hearing.
Mr. Trejo, are you going to be? Okay, would you like me to do it? Okay. I'm just going to take a second and get it here. Just one moment.
Okay, I would like to close this session, go to regular public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Carlos Trejo. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development for the City of Olivet. And tonight before you is Bill 2952, which is an amendment to the master plan, the master development plan approved for the Olivet Gateway Plaza PDD or Planned Development District in here. This is the council has had 2 readings on said ordinance. This is the public hearing to provide an overview regarding the notice and opportunity for public comments, and then for the council to consider deliberations or actions on the ordinance as submitted. Tonight's ordinance essentially on the second PDF amends the original adopting ordinance, which was 2675. And ordinance 2675 established the Olivet Gateway Planned Development District. It's a PDD, what we term a PDD, also known as now as Olive Crossing. The adopted master development plan is referenced as Exhibit B1 dated July 30th, 2019 in the adopting ordinance. This amendment, in an effort to maintain consistency with the recent changes in the TIF amendment and the TIF redevelopment plan, really focuses on Lot 4 and the illustration and the notes that were noted that the land use on Lot 4 was for a 4-story office retail building. The developer is requesting to change that land use to a 5-story multifamily building, multifamily residential apartment structure. In doing so, the developer is not requesting any additional changes to the conditions that have been outlined in the master development plan regarding the building height. It's still going to be the same height that was authorized in the original permit. The setback would be maintained, as that setback is over 20 feet above the minimum required by code. They would continue to provide a buffer screen wall along the residential properties to the south, which is 2 feet higher than the minimum required by code. And of course, the maximum building height would be 64 feet. as was approved for the office structure, even though the stories are different in what is illustrated. The additional thing that this does, not necessarily reflected as part of the TIF and the TIF redevelopment plan changes, is provides an option to combine lots 1 and 2 for a single tenant retail structure as the developer continues to try to pursue other retail, more like grocer opportunities if the market permits. On the next slide, you'll have the adopted or the current approved Olive Crossing Master Plan, which identifies the existing lot structure for the development proposal. And again, focusing on lot 4, you can see the existing office retail structure with the office parking garage on the western side off of Price Road. On the next slide, you'll see more specifically lot 4 and lots 1 and 2 in their current configuration as adopted. Again, this is not any change, as adopted under the current ordinance. And then the proposed illustrations of the office structure and parking structure that would be proposed for lot 4. The next slide will illustrate the changes that are being proposed for lot 4, converting the office retail structure into a residential apartment structure there at the southwest corner of the property grounds. And you'll see the proposed lots 1 and 2, which would stay as currently exhibited. And you can see an aerial diagram of a conceptual redevelopment of that planned development district. On the next slide, again, you'll see the combined lots 1 and 2, and then also the multifamily apartment residential structure there at that southwest corner off of Price Road. You'll also note that the garage structure would be relocated as opposed to being on Price Road. It would be on the eastern side of the property grounds. Now, this is a concept master plan, and we're getting into the details, but this overall gives you a sense and idea of what the development and the development characteristics would be. The next slide, in our findings, these changes are consistent with the 2006 Cities Comprehensive Plan. Changes are consistent with the 2011 Urban Land Institute St. Louis Section Technical Assistance Panel recommendations that were prepared together jointly with University City. It furthers the goals and objectives of the MU Gateway District. It's consistent with the 2015 RFP that was issued for the redevelopment of the interchange of this area. It's consistent with the 2016 Catalyst Strategy for Economic Enhancement of the City of Olivet, as was acknowledged by the council, and it's consistent with the 2016 Gateway I-170 Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Plan and the 2 subsequent amendments from 2018 and 2021. So following through in this process, we requested that the change was significant enough to require a resubmission and re-review by the city's Planning and Community Design Commission, where we sit down and talk about the planning principles and of course our comprehensive plan. We looked at the vision to ensure that the developer maintained and was consistent with the overall comprehensive plan vision. We looked at the 4 focus areas: community identity, economic development, transportation connections, and open spaces. All these are incorporated within the development to a satisfactory level of the commission. We also discussed the challenges as outlined in our 2006 strategic plan. Challenges that we're going to include were the public perception of multifamily housing, the public perception of traffic and the existing traffic conditions on the Olive Corridor and on Price and Olive. We talked about the apartments versus condos and the differences and the equitable reviews of those two and how they're treated. We talked about the impact on schools, as that also filtered into the TIF review. We talked about traffic. We talked about building heights. We talked about setbacks, being sensitive to the concerns of the neighboring properties to the south in the Stoneleigh Towers subdivision. We looked at the setbacks. We talked about the overall height in there, and the commission is cognizant that as we go and progress through this development plan, as we look at the lot 4, if it's adopted by council, and as we look at the other lots of the office building and the hotel, that would be looking more at how sound, would be treated, how landscaping would be used as a mechanism to control sound to help in the visual buffering. We talked about natural landscapes, and of course, there was discussion about the grocer that just continued on since '06. Items for the record, just to ensure that they're submitted in the process, is the 2006 comprehensive plan, the 2011 ULI St. Louis TAP report, ordinance 2485, which was adopted in October 2012, that established Article 22, the MU Gateway District, in our zoning regulations, and did the initial rezoning of the MU Gateway District properties, both north and south of Olive Boulevard, near the interchange. We want to enter ordinance 2458, which again adopted in October 2012, and ordinance 2658 adopted in March 2019, which were the MU district rezonings, both specific to the commercial portions of the property that existed at the time in 2012 and the residential properties in 2019. The 2015 RFP, or request for proposals for the interchange redevelopment, our 2016 catalyst strategy for the economic enhancement of the Olive Boulevard corridor, ordinances 2605 adopted in April 2017, which was the original TIF redevelopment plan, or adopted the original TIF redevelopment plan, and as it was amended in ordinance 2653 in 2019 and ordinance 2720 in 2021, which was the most recent change and why we're here tonight. Ordinance 2675 adopted in September 2019, establishing the Olivet Gateway Plaza PDD, Plan Development District, and adopting the Master Development Plan that we're here tonight to consider an amendment. The Planning and Community Design Commission recommendation of amending the Master Development Plan as approved on May 20th, 2021, including the staff reports that were issued, the public hearing, affidavit, and notifications that go along with the public hearing process, and subsequent ordinances that have been reviewed and adopted by the City Council, all related to the Olive Gateway District development, including ordinance 2579, 2606, 2629, 2648, 2654, 2677, 2678, 2688, 2703, 2710, 2720, and 2721. The Olivet Municipal Code and Zoning Map, and this presentation before the council. Be glad to answer any specific questions regarding the amendment there.
Mayor, I'm looking. Are you ready to look at, ask if there are any comments? I'm
Yes.
sorry. I was just, I got ahead of myself. I'm looking at the Zoom participation attendee list to see if anyone has their hands up to speak. And at this point, I don't see anyone. Oh, there is one, sorry. Mark Minton. Mark, I think if you unmute yourself.
There
you
we go.
should be good.
Hi, Mark Minton, 115 Stoneleigh Towers. And Carlos, we talked about a lot. You brought up a lot of great points. That's all factual and accurate. But members of City Council, I'd like to point out that a couple of members, if you could please listen rather than talk, I'd appreciate your attention to this. You're proposing a 5-story building with an 8-foot tall privacy fence, but no trees to buffer 5 feet of new commercial real estate and all of that. Stoneleigh Towers predates Olivet, and we have 7-figure homes that are behind this development. And it feels like tremendous disrespect with regard to the buffer to be at the last minute where we're getting approval. We're just now seeing iterations of a buffer, and they certainly are not satisfactory in my opinion. So please stand up for the Olivet residents and expect the developers to do more for our community. Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question of you, Mr. Minton.
Of course.
What would you recommend?
I'd recommend trees. I think in addition to a 8-foot wall, you need to have trees to potentially buffer the buildings, at least the visual when you walk down our street or drive through our street. The impact of a 5-story building is massive.
Mm-hmm.
It's tremendous. And to have that close to the property we're bending for everything the developer wants. I'm seeing no leadership out of Olivet to stick up for what we want, unless this is the design, but it really doesn't feel very community friendly. You guys have canceled meetings with us. This whole process has been extremely frustrated. I asked about the trees a couple council sessions ago. I still haven't had any feedback from you guys. It's just pretty frustrating. So I hope you look out for us on this one.
So, Mr. Minton, if we were to plant trees, they would be fairly young trees. Do you think they would provide any real buffer to you?
How long is the building going to be there? This is not a 2-year conversation. You're taking a 90-year-old subdivision and you're going to put a 5-story building right behind it. Actually, you're going to do multiple of them. And you're satisfactory with an 8-foot wall. The developer is not required to use any of that 14 acres to plant trees to visually buffer their massive development. Come on, guys. You know, the rules were 45 feet tall for buildings. You guys have taken those rules, thrown them out the window. We're going to be looking at 60 and 80-foot tall buildings. The least you can do is try to buffer the darn thing.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
You're welcome.
Mayor, if I can provide some clarification, because I think there could be some misinterpretation with some of the comments that were made. And in no case do I want to, detail this, but just to make sure that the information is factual. One, at the concept master plan or the master development plan, we don't get typically into the landscaping details. Now, this is our first PDD. We're working now on our second, and it is a learning process, and we're trying to be as extensive as we can. The next step when lot 4 comes in, the expectation is, and it is posted online, there would be a more detailed landscape plan going down to the actual materials of each building and such. So in no way is the city trying to divert that information. It's just when you talk about conceptual, you generally don't get to the nitty-gritty details of the development plan itself. So this is kind of looking at it holistically. Now, I concur and can understand the expectation of wanting to have it broader or more. And there are comments that I will take in seriously. And when we go through the next go round, we'll make sure that those are identified. And we'll bring these comments regarding the landscaping to the commission's attention if action is taken tonight. The other thing is setbacks. Understand that the setback by code is 10 feet. We have requested the developer to provide a minimum 30-foot setback, and they have done so. They've also have done some changes to the building, but again, those aren't the issues that are discussed at the conceptual level. Those are the issues that get when you discuss at the design level that will go on at the commission of how are you breaking or creating voids and notches at the commission level. So we will take those into account, but again, because of the rectangular building that was proposed in the previous proposal, we did say no less than 30, even though the code authorized 10. Regarding height, I don't know how this interpretation ever came to fruition, but by right, every commercial property and all of that can go up to 45 feet. If you want to go higher, you have to be reviewed through the commission. And in no way did the code ever state that you cannot go higher than 45 feet. It just says by right. So if somebody wanted to do 45 feet, that's what the code allows. And you'd have a difficult time in the process, but you have a pretty good review system. You have a pretty good site plan review system to help mediate any externalities and those effects. But by right, somebody could go up to 45 feet. The code says that if you exceed the 45 feet, then you go through those systems of review, and those are still part of that process and went through the conceptual, through the master development plan. So again, I take into heart the issues about the landscaping, the setback, and the height. This is a process that we're learning through, and we're also trying to mediate those issues with the commission on there. And again, I recognize what the directive that the council gives, or even the comments from our residents, to make sure that those are forwarded to the commission at the next level.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a quick point? Having been on the PCDC when that ordinance was written and being involved in the writing of that ordinance, I can tell you the simplest way I thought of it was the 45 feet was a trigger to a new process. It was not a limit. Okay. The 45 feet said, if you want to build 40, as Mr. Trejo said, if you want to build 45 feet, you don't need any special approval. But if you want to build above, it has to go through a design review process with Planning and Community Design Commission. And in no way limited things to 45 feet. So.
I have to also say, I'd like to make a statement as well. Mr. Minton said that we're not doing our job and that we are bending to this developer in every way that he wants. I take great offense to that. We look out for the city of Olivet as a whole. And because there may be something that Mr. Minton doesn't necessarily agree to, doesn't give him the right to say that we're not doing our job. Our job, first and foremost, is to care for the city of Olivet as a whole. Now, we may have some things that a few people may not agree with, but overall, what we're all doing is our job. So, Mr. Minton, I hope you're still on the line and heard my point of view. Thank you very much.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
I have Scott Smith. I'm gonna make you a panelist.
Good evening. This is Scott Smith at 193 Stoneleigh Towers. I live just south of Lot 4, and I would like to request that the city protect the trees that are on the property of Stoneleigh Towers area, and my property in particular, are protected from heavy machine usage, and also the grading that's proposed to lower the grade above the proposed wall. There's a certain amount of root damage that would be anticipated there with that type of work. The wall construction is going to cut back closer to the property line, so it's not as if you get a straight cut through there. And I'd also like to have a larger buffer area between the wall and the property line to maintain the health of our trees. There's no reason why it has to be sort of at the minimum. There's 30 feet to give, so I'd like to have at least 25 feet to give the existing property owners some decent treatment from the city.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'm gonna put you back to an attendee. Mayor, I don't see any other hands up.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make a statement? Sir, come right on up to this microphone and state your name and where you live, sir.
My name is Bill Winter. I live at 9111 Olive in the apartments over there, and my apartment looks out over this construction, which I have much enjoyed watching happen and take place. But one thing over the years, and I've lived there going on 48 years now, until they really started working on this, I didn't know I had a line of sight to the houses over there on the one street, which has been totally demolished. The trees did such a wonderful job of blocking it. And there's still a line of trees there. And the reason I mention this, I don't have a basis on either side, but if you drive up Hilltop and go over the Collingwood Spur and go down Collingwood toward Olive, you can look over and see what the existing tree line looks like right now. And I have to agree with the one speaker, if you have pine trees or something that can grow up to 30 or 35 feet, that's going to be a beautiful surrounding to that down the line. I just do it as an advisory, because if you look at it, that tree line right now is a beautiful, as you come into Olivet, that line right there, if it's not there, you see houses and you see other things back by Stoneleigh Tower. Right now you've got, and I enjoyed it for years and years, just this beautiful tree line. It looked like there was a forest back there. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Does anyone else have a statement? Okay, go ahead. At this moment, I'd like to close out our public hearing. Council members, do you have any statements that you would like to make?
I have a series of questions for Mr. Trejo. I just want some clarification. How tall is the building, the office building at Olive and Old Bonham compared to, is that going to be the same height, 5 stories?
That, I mean, it's,
Old Bonham and Olive also backs up to a lot of new homes.
yeah. I don't know the exact answer off the top of my head. I know we've done a study on it. It's about 90 feet. But it is a,
Could
I
you
think
say
we-
that in the mic for?
yeah,
just-
I know we have up to a series of 700 suites. I think those 700 suites are the penthouse up on top and our address for the mechanical equipment
Okay.
and some of the in there. So there are
And
six.
it's higher because it
6
sits on a
levels.
garage?
It sits on a garage in there, but the ground and the grades are in nowhere similar comparison
Right, right.
in there. And
My other question is, if just to confirm, is my recollection correct that when we were looking at these plans originally, and I'm talking with like in the last 3 to 4 years, conceptually, that the size of the wall has increased, the height of the wall, because the residents in Stoneleigh Towers requested that it be 8 feet or 10 feet, 8 feet higher, 8 feet, it was only going to be 5 feet.
well, and
It was only going to be 6 feet, now it's going to be 8 feet.
the code called out for a minimum 6-foot height.
Okay.
In the discussions with the developer, and I couldn't tell you, I would like to say that it was based on our discussions with the developer table to table about the exchanges of if you're going to seek, this height, then the expectations are you're going to have a more significant setback, which it went from 10 to 30,
Okay.
and also more screening, and that we would be, in the commission discussion, they were agreeable to increase the screen wall from 6 feet to 8 feet in an effort to.
Because if my memory serves correctly, some of these came at the request of Mr. Mitten as the trustee of Stoneleigh Towers in some of our conversations and meetings that we did have with them, that they wanted more of a setback and that they also wanted the wall higher. So when we start talking about trees tonight, I'm a little confused because would the wall be in front of the trees, is my understanding, or it's behind the trees?
That's up to the developer and how it's set and designed. Typically, and in past practices, the buffer wall has gone at the perimeter of the property.
Okay.
So the trees have been
they-
facing the interior of the development. Into the
Okay.
development.
But the trees right now are on the property or they're not on the property? These large trees that they're talking about?
There's
Or
a
these
series.
rows
that-
of trees?
There is some heavy growth trees that are part of an abandoned railroad right of way that has
Okay.
been there. But there also is a utility line that runs right through it in there. So that's the diagonal. Along the east-west, which is where the old Locust Lane is, there's
Right.
asphalt. Then there is I think about a 5-foot strip of grassy area, which the poles to the utility lines that service, I think those properties, runs across. And then finally, they're in Stoneleigh Towers itself. They themselves have a 10-foot common ground strip that runs east to west in there. And of course, the developer isn't authorized to do any improvements off-site. Then their properties start in there. So the one concern or one thing to make sure the council acknowledges is that within these areas that along the perimeter property is where the location of most easements and utilities are. And there is a gas line that runs along there. There are the overhead utility lines that run around there. Our request or working with the developer has been to put the main lines underground. That is going to cause
Correct.
disruption. The ones that run east to west along Locust, those poles will stay as is. I don't think that there's going to be any changes to those. And there are none illustrated in those plans.
Okay.
Well, I would also like to say that I am in agreement with this gentleman here. I am a tree lover too. And if there was any way that those trees could be saved, I'm all for it if it's not too disruptive. I think it adds a lot of character to a neighborhood.
Absolutely, maturity.
Mature trees are beautiful, especially around the fall period. If they could be saved, I think it would be a good idea if it is not too disruptive. I would like the developer to come up and, if you would, speak to what everyone is talking about, if you will, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Greg Yowitz, 6 Heatherville Lane. I am the manager of Keat Olivet Gateway LLC, the developer of what used to be called Keat Olivet Gateway. We shortened the name to Olive Crossing. So I'll take a few of these in my recollection of orders. Let's talk about the trees first. So all the beautiful trees that you see now, those are not my trees. All those trees remain. Those trees are either in the common ground of Stoneleigh Towers, if you're looking at sort of the north side of Stoneleigh Towers, say from Locust Lane south. Those are all their trees. Those trees are within the area of the easement for the Ameren service that runs from Price Road east toward the highway. Now, when it comes to, and so those trees are not ours. We don't plan to damage them. We are going to be grading to level the ground out on our site. And our hope is that it will not damage those trees. But again, that's within our property and part of the construction of our project. So now let's talk about trees when it comes to the comment made by Mr. Minton about how there were going to be no trees. Well, that's not a factually accurate statement. There will be no trees at the that we plant north of Stoneleigh Towers in the area of the old Locust Lane, primarily because we're going to have to cut the ground on our side to make the grades work from Price Road and from Olive, and have to install a retaining wall. And you cannot plant trees at the top of a retaining wall, or they will impact the structural integrity of the wall. Now, we also will be putting an 8-foot barrier fence, site-proof barrier, on top of that retaining wall. And the reason I mentioned that, when Mr. Minton also talked about the height of the building, as Mr. Trejo said, the original setback was 10 feet. In our design, which you can see on our concept plan, one, we've agreed to a larger buffer, which is 30 feet minimum, and two, a big portion of this building is well beyond 30 feet. So we're trying to accommodate that visually as well. And based on our submittal to the Planning Commission, Planning and Community Design Commission for this Thursday, I believe the top height of our roof truss is somewhere below 60 feet. So we are actually able to come in with a 5-story building at a lower height than the original 4-story office structure, because floor heights are different. Now let's talk about his comment about trees in general. Well, once we reach a point where the ground, our level and their level, are closer to the same, say within 2 to 6 feet elevation change, we don't have a massive retaining wall, there will be, especially in the area of Mr. Minton's house, and he should have seen this from our concept plans, we will be planting trees, because the Olivet Code stipulates that we have a certain number of points in order to meet the landscaping code. And along that buffer with Stoneleigh Towers, where it is safe to do, which is less safe in the area of Mr. Smith's house because of the retaining wall, more safe in the area of Mr. Minton's house, we will be planting a line of trees. I am a big believer in green. I'm a big believer in plantings. There will be lots of trees and lots of plants all over this site. Is there anything else I didn't answer?
It's quite complete for me, sir.
I kind of know a little bit about the site after 7 years.
Thank you very much. All right, go ahead, Ms. Waldman. Thank you.
Excuse me for what I'm about to ask. City Manager, could you put up the summary from Carlos Trejo's summary at the public hearing? Mr. Martin, I'm all about legal. Carlos. Yes, ma'am.
This
Thank you
one?
very much. Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Carlos, look at number 3 and number 4. Ordinance 2485 and then ordinance 2458. Are there 2 different ordinances, or is that a typo?
Between 3 and 4, those are both 24. It is.
Look at your eyes.
It should have been 85.
Okay, Mr. Martin, Does that need to be corrected because this is a document with regard to this project?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'm sure the ordinance itself.
The ordinances are
Okay,
correct.
That's
it's
that's
just
all
that
I,
one line.
you know, I'm legal. That's all I needed to ask. Thank you.
Do any of our other council members have any questions and or concerns? Okay. I would like to ask for a motion.
I thought Greg was gonna go for it.
I can, I have it. I apologize. I just didn't have it up.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve Bill 2952, an ordinance to amend the master development plan illustrated as Exhibit B1 under ordinance 2675. An ordinance rezoning certain redevelopment area from MU Gateway I-170 Olive Boulevard Mixed Use Gateway District to Olivet Gateway Plaza Plan Development District. Amending the city's zoning map accordingly, adopting a corresponding master development plan, and adopting pertinent land use and zoning regulations.
Second.
Okay, can we please poll the council?
Councilmember Carl,
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman.
Yes.
Chairman Weil,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes.
Motion passed by action of the Olivet City Council. Bill number 2952 becomes ordinance number 2725. Item number 7 is bill number 2953, an ordinance to create a planned development district by approving the vacation of the streets known as Irvington Court and Rayham Court, approving the consolidation of 4.926 acres of property to be known as Olivet Apartments, boundary adjustment plat from SR Single Family Residential District to MU Gateway I-170 Olive Boulevard Mixed Use Gateway District, and approving a development plan and designating a planned development district to be known as the Irvington Rayham Olivet Apartments. Second reading and public hearing.
Go ahead, Mr. Trejo.
Go ahead and are we in the public?
Oh, okay, sorry. Mr. Trejo, you have the floor. We're open
Public hearing.
a public hearing, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, members of the City Council, again, my name's Carlos Trejo. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development with the City of Olivet. And I'm here tonight to present Bill 2953, which is our second planned development district based out of our MU district adopted in 2012. In there, Bill 2953, in quick summary, does 5 specific things. It vacates the roadways known currently as Irvington and Rhyme Courts. It creates a consolidation plat of 23 single families along with the 23 single families along with the vacated right-of-ways that we just mentioned into one parcel. It rezones that parcel from the existing single-family residential to MU Gateway, consistent with our 2006 comprehensive plan and the MU Gateway as adopted in 2012. It creates a planned development designation and adopts a master development plan for the construction of a multifamily residential apartment complex on approximately the 4 acres of the property. So here's a location kind of looking southward. On there, you'll see in yellow the 2 streets of Irvington and Rhyme Court, kind of nestled between the city's, is that a public works building, I think, or something like that? I'm not sure. There, the old abandoned railroad gateway, which is lies right between the CVS and then Chevy's right off of Olive. And you'll see that there are some residential properties that are part of a different 2 different subdivisions that maintain there on Hilltop. All this occurrence is south of Alice Place in there. In the next area, I'll get you a closer close-up of the 2 roadways, Irvington and Rhyme, and the existing 23 single-family residential properties that are on that parcel ground. Here is a more formal development survey showing the existing homes, the road rights away, Alice Place being on the top, which is to the north, Irvington and Rhyme. You can see the 2 cul-de-sacs within the interior and the 23 single families that address off of those 2 courts. On your right-hand side, you can see properties address off of Hilltop Avenue that are not part of the development. And then to the left, which would be the west, you can see Price Road. In the next slide, you would see the proposed development that has been submitted for there. And if I can, excuse me, just 1 second, I left my paperwork on that table. You can see the two, the primary access and the address of the development would be off of Price Road. When the city approved the development for the CVS complex back in the early 2000s, we secured an access easement both for future development of this area. We noted based on our comprehensive plan that that was an opportunity area for the city to look at future redevelopment possibilities. And secondly, we secured an access easement for the extension of the Centennial Trail Greenway running north to south. So those two significant things we did based on following the recommendations and the vision of our 2006 strategic plan that are coming to fruition here in 2021. One is that access off of Price. The other is facilitating the Greenway acquisition and placement of their trail north to south. There would also be an entrance to the north off of Alice Place, which is a public street. This would be the proposed master development plan that would be part of the planned development district. The next slide. Kind of a quick summary of the request of the PDD and this ordinance is to assemble the 23 single family properties, vacate the 2 roads, consolidate this into a 4.93 acre lot, rezone the properties from SR single family residential to MU mixed use gateway, propose a 4.93 acre planned development district to be known as the Irvington Rhyme Olivet Apartments PDD. In this, you would adopt a master development plan if acted by the council for a 5-story, 207 unit multifamily residential apartment complex. Here are the visuals that would be incorporated as part of the ordinance to identify what is being proposed in the PDD as part of the master development plan. Once the developer is ready to pursue the actual construction, they will go to the city's Planning and Community Design Commission with pretty much additional details getting into the specifics for review of the commission. One thing I'll note, which is interesting, again, this is now our second planned development district. It's worked well and it's been consistent with the objectives of the MU Gateway District. And we've learned a lot through this process. One of these things was the uniqueness of how the code was written and the applications that we're seeing today. The code was written to anticipate a redevelopment of a significant size, such as the 14 acres that would have multiple buildings, multiple lots. In there, the concept development process works well. You adopt the master development plan similar to other communities. Creve Coeur is famous for having similar concept plans for the hospital campuses, the corporate office buildings that they have throughout there. In there where you're going to get an over idea of what the potential of the development is. But once one of these lots is ready, they come in and then they do, they go through a whole review process like you would on an individual lot. Well, in this case, for this PDD, it is a smaller parcel. It is almost 5 acres, which is still significant and it's quite a significant assemblage. I don't discount that aspect, but it's not the multi-lot, multi-building type of development. In this case, it's one structure, one use, one surface parking and the access. So here you do have a little bit more detail, but they still have to go through the same process that the other development will, where they have to go back to the commission to get signed off onto what probably will look or eventually will stay consistent into a 5-story apartment complex with the materials and the vignettes that you see here. On the next slide, again, in our findings, we found that this development was consistent with the 2006 city's comprehensive plan. It identified this as one of the areas for redevelopment, both north and south of Olive between Price and I-170. It was part of the boundaries of the 2011 ULI St. Louis Technical Assistance Panel recommendations when they did their report, when we did the project jointly with University City. It identified this area up to Alice as a potential redevelopment opportunity, and it recommended multifamily use for those areas. It's consistent with our MU Gateway, our objectives, our purposes and intent. And it's also part of a process that we're having discussions regarding the Northeast Quadrant Transportation Sketch Planning Study to help address traffic issues that we are aware of that extend from I-170 to Dealman, north of Olive in there. So on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about how what the commission did, how we did the review and the analysis, and some of the things that came about in there and molded their recommendation to the city council. One, we talked about the comprehensive plan. We looked at the vision of creating a dynamic sense of place. This gives us an opportunity to increase the mixture of uses within this area near the interchange, capitalize on the accessibility of the interchange and the connections of the other properties surrounding both commercial and single family. It helps us expand our housing options and housing opportunities, whether they're for sale or for rent or apartment. This gives an opportunity to keep a consistent area of different housing types and units within our community. We talked about the 4 focus areas of the strategic plan: community identity, economic development, transportation connections, and open spaces. And all these 4 focuses were observed by the commission through this process. When we talked about community identity, maintaining a residential component of this neighborhood or this area of the community. Remember, back in the early or the late 90s, it was a vision at one point of removing all the residential properties in this area and going to commercial retail. Unfortunately, we have the area that we have, and that I think that's a good thing, and we're maintaining that character, that identity of residential first in there, and focusing our commercial and retail opportunities closer to I-170. We talked about the economic development that would be proposed in here. This was a privately assembled development project where the 23 property owners negotiated with the developer to redevelop these properties. And in this case, the city was not involved in any of the assemblage in that process. We talked about the transportation connections. Again, going back to the strategic plan, obtaining the access easements off of the CVS development. We recognize the importance of trying to distribute traffic. We also know or are aware, and we'll get into later detail about the current traffic conditions that exist within that quadrant as a whole. And we talked about open spaces and the opportunities to create well-designed open spaces and landscape opportunities. And in this case, on Alice Place, you'll see how they're kind of creating a linear park, extending the sidewalk for a major sidewalk on Hilltop to a major sidewalk on Dealman Industrial that are not connected at this moment. They're disconnected. This development will reconnect those 2 sidewalks and provide residents in that opportunity to connect to the community as a whole. And that's another thing in the previous development. We're also creating a pedestrian crossing through the expansion of the Centennial Greenway on Olive Boulevard to cross Olive in there. So we're focusing on those 4 primary aspects of the comprehensive plan. But we also understand the challenges. Again, density, multifamily residential, traffic, impact on schools and all that. They had that discussion. They had the discussion about the heights, the setbacks, and the building orientations. And there was a lot of public comment on those, even from adjacent property owners of their perspectives, their views, and their thoughts on how they would be impacted. And I think the commission had a good discussion and tried to improve those standards as best as they could and balance both the developers and the adjacent property owners' needs. So we are adding additional apartments. Understand, the city hasn't seen any apartment development redevelopment since 1986. So we've gone almost well over 30 years without any multifamily redevelopment in our community, and we've lagged behind our adjacent neighbors in providing these different viable housing opportunities and options. We hope that this will also kind of put pressure on that existing multifamily housing stock that has benefited from a lack of competition. And now we're starting to see that. We've seen in the St. Louis area, based on a trade magazine that does multifamily analysis, is Jaeger, that the overall rents, rental rents in the St. Louis area have risen about 3% this June. But in Olivet, they've actually dropped 2%. And that's reflective of we're lagging behind on reinvestment on multifamily opportunities for our community. Or one can look at that. I could not justify that that would be true, but it was easy to take and decipher that information in there. We are aware of traffic. Whether this development happens or not, there are traffic issues in what we call this northeast quadrant. That's the area from I-170 to Dillman Road north of Olive. We know that the intersection, the signal at Hilltop and Olive underperforms according to the grading provided by the Missouri Department of Transportation. We know that Price and Olive underperforms. We know that Dillman and Olive underperforms, and we know that Dillman Industrial and Olive also underperform. And it's not that they underperform, they're just not designed for the capacity of we have over 3,500 employees in the industrial park, and you add over 274 residential units, what we call it off of Hilltop and Arrowhead. That the volumes are there, the demands are there at different peaks. And through the Olivet Gateway PDD, there are proposed improvements to the Hilltop interchange and also to facilitate east-west movement in Olive. So we had that discussion with the developer, acknowledge that that it's not this development that is the issue, is that there is an issue, and that they be cognizant of it, and they participate with the city and assisting us, helping find options and opportunities to try to improve the current conditions. In this case, they are participating on two factors. One, of course, is the sidewalk extension, and two, also contributing funds to future improvements to Price and Olive. And the city has engaged a design engineer to start looking at the various options for improving Price and Olive. We want to make sure, and we're glad that we capture that easement from CVS to ensure that we could distribute this traffic to the west towards Price and not impact as much as Hilltop in there, to be able to disperse our traffic throughout that area. And then we're also looking at the other opportunities at Dillman Industrial and Dillman Road itself. So they had those discussions. They talked about the building heights and being sensitive to the nature on the building height. This building exceeds 45 feet. That's okay. It's allowed by code. However, we review it and we look and we have some expectation that there are going to be some parts of the ordinance that they're going to exceed. In this case, they provided a bigger setback than the 10-foot minimum. They also provided some additional landscaping along some certain homes in that area and widened the buffer that was set. And then we talked about the building orientation and how windows and balconies were kind of set and the impact that they would have on existing residential properties surrounding that area. On the next slide, the commission recommended to the city council to consider the PDD, the rezoning, the vacation, the consolidation, and this master development plan. So for the record, Mayor, if I can enter some of these items to ensure that they're stated. One was our 2006 comprehensive plan, the 2011 ULI St. Louis TAP report, ordinance 2485, which was adopted on October 2012, that established the MU Gateway District and initially rezoned commercial properties like Chevy's and CVS into MU Gateway properties. Ordinances 2458 adopted in 2012 and 2658, the MU district rezonings. Sorry, I think that repeating it, what was on there. The 2016 Catalyst strategy, the PCDC recommendation, including the master development plan that was highlighted back in May 6, 2021, and the staff reports that were issued to the commission, the public hearing affidavit and notifications that were issued, the Olivet Municipal Code and zoning map, and this presentation before the council. Mayor, that concludes my presentation. I'd be glad to answer any specific questions council may have.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Trejo has done an excellent job of summarizing this process of this project. I appreciate everything that you've done.
Thank
and
you.
The planning commission.
Mayor, there is a hand up.
Okay.
Laura, I'm going to move you over to panelist. I'm sorry, Mr. Koenig, I saw you too, sorry. Okay, if you unmute yourself, Laura, you should be good to go. There you are.
Hi, good evening. I'm Laura Ragsdale, 1130 Irvington Court. I just wanted to address the council one more time. I am a lifelong resident. I hope to stay in Olivet if this is approved. I love the community. I love my little area. However, as a lifelong resident, I've been through this now 5 times. And on my little street of 23 homes, there's significant amount of empty houses, significant. I believe there's 7 total empty right now. And that's just, it's time. The city needs to move forward. We need to have you guys approve this so we as residents can start moving forward with our lives instead of being put on hold every couple years that, oh, let's do this now. Oh, nope, we're gonna try again. Like, let's just take care of it this time. I know it's the 5th time, maybe, hopefully 5th time's a charm. I'm ready. I know most of the residents down here are ready. People are starting to look at houses. Like, let's move forward so that the city can have some beautiful new apartments and residents down here can move forward with their lives. Thank you.
I'm going to move you back to an attendee.
Thank you.
Mayor, there are a couple hands up in the audience.
Okay, if you would please approach the podium, sir, and tell us your name and your address.
Larry Koenig, 1131 Hilltop. I really want to address the council tonight on mitigating what's going to happen during the construction of this project. And I would request the council consider taking the following actions. First of all, no construction traffic allowed to use Hilltop to get into the project. Everything would have to come in initially through Price and Alice. Require the developer to construct an entrance to Price Road at the very beginning of the project and only allow them to demolish enough houses to clear the way to get that entrance in. Alice Place is narrow, it is not in good shape, and that heavy construction traffic will destroy it. Now, in the meantime, that you'd allow them to do asbestos mitigation and environmental mitigation on the properties, but and that would be light truck traffic going in there. But all the heavy traffic would have to come in and out over Price Road. Once that entrance is in, the entrance from Irvington would be closed. It would only be there for an emergency situation. I think that would help eliminate a lot of the problems in the neighborhood that the residents who, like me, I would not only have the noise in front of me, if they were coming up and down Hilltop, I'd be hearing trucks and heavy traffic going up and down Hilltop all day long. So this way they would be confined to coming in off of Price Road. Same thing with the residents who live on Alice and back on Margaret and even into Edward. It would help keep a lot of that noise and dust and debris down where they would be going just strictly in and out of there. I have one other question about the sidewalk that Mr. Trejo spoke about. On all the drawings and everything, it only shows that sidewalk on their property. Are they going to extend that sidewalk to Price and to Hilltop, or is this just going to be a sidewalk to nowhere?
That it is part of the development agreement that will come before the council on the 27th, that they will extend the sidewalk connecting Hilltop to Price, sorry. So it would be the whole way, yes.
Okay, that's good, because otherwise it just was looked kind of silly that it's just a sidewalk, just in front of their property. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Kindly state your name and address, please.
It's been a while. Barb Grenzick, 1217 Olivet Drive. I am all for this project. I think it's much needed. My biggest worry, and I think one of the biggest difficulties you'll have, is trying to figure out the traffic at the end, because traffic coming off of 170, both going left to the new development, as well as additional potentially 300 cars going into this new residential area. It's going to, I'm glad I'm not going to be on that or have anything to do with that kind of a plan, because it is going to be difficult. Right now, when you come off of, if I'm driving west on Olive, people don't stop when they're coming off of 170 at that stoplight. Most of them don't. And so I have got to put my right turn signal on almost immediately, and they still don't care. So it's just amazing, and it's going to, with all this other traffic that's going to occur, it's good luck. But I am for the project. I think it is a good project, and I think it's needed. I agree with Larry, though, that the bulk of the traffic for the construction has to be off of Price, or you'll demolish, you'll destroy Hilltop, you'll destroy Alice, you'll destroy all of our minds. Thank you.
Welcome. Please state your name and address.
Sue Rich, 8927 Hilltop Manor Drive. I'm gonna keep my comments super short because I've made many of these before, but traffic's the number one concern. The second concern is, he mentioned the sidewalk going all the way to Dealman, I assume by connecting to the Greenway. And so the concern is, how are you gonna get from Hilltop down to Alice safely? The second issue is, thank you, COVID, I've been able to walk significantly almost daily in the area. Right now, to go from Hilltop and Olive across to where the gateway is, just east of 170, I clocked it 4 times at 12 minutes. It took me to walk from the one corner to the other because there are not lights working. We know that MoDOT didn't put the pedestrian crossings in, number one. And number two, traffic absolutely refuses to yield to a pedestrian in a crosswalk trying to get down there. So I hope they'll do a better job of that. And safety is the number one concern. I'm 100% for the development. I think the density is too high. I think you're putting 207 additional units in there. And unless there's some major redesign, it's already gets an F rating for getting in and out of the area. So I don't know how they're going to possibly try to do it. I've yet to see any plan that's been developed to show any mitigation of that whatsoever. It's definitely not going to get better. So those are my only concerns. Thanks.
Mayor, I do not see any other hands up. The developer is on and would like to speak, if I may bring them over. Joe Kelly. Hold on.
You got me?
We see you and everything. Ryan, Carly.
Yep, Ryan Carly and Josh Barkis.
There he is. All right, let's see. There they are. Okay, great.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Well, we were hopeful that we would be in front of you in person this evening, but I've caught a nasty head cold and didn't want to subject the room to that. So in an abundance of caution, we are remote yet again. So here we are. And I was kicked off from my computer, but I'm joining from my phone. So if you can't hear me, please just let me know, raise your hand. but I will proceed accordingly. My name's Ryan Carley. I'm with Director of Development with Opus Development Company. And we were just going to run through a little overview on Opus, some of our representative projects, and then dig into some of the project specific information here. Carlos did an excellent job of covering high level overview of the project and then address some of the specific concerns from some of the folks in the audience there as well. So Joe, I think, are you able to share our presentation here?
Yep. Pulling it up now.
So, yeah, next slide, Joe. We thought it might be helpful to just provide an overview of the steps that we've taken to this point to get to where we are here, and that's what's outlined on this slide. So we engaged early on with Olivet staff in October of last year, and then subsequently had a neighborhood meeting to garner interest and input from the community as it relates to our proposed development here, and then several meetings conceptually with PCDC, and then on to final development review and first reading with City Council a couple of weeks ago. And here we are for our second reading and hopeful vote this evening for the project. We received a lot of valuable input from all of those meetings, from the community, the city staff, and from Planning Commission. And we've made several modifications to our plan along the way to address those comments. And that's what you're seeing this evening, all of those incorporated into this presentation. So Opus itself is a 67-year-old company. We're comprised of a fully integrated team of architects, engineers, design builders, and developers. We diversify by product type with a heavy focus on multifamily and industrial, and we've developed over 4,500 apartment projects across our platform over the past 5 years. And then Opus itself is, as I mentioned, a fully integrated team. So we're the contractor, Opus Design Build. So we build the project. We'll be the contractor on this project. We're the architect and engineer of record, and we're also the developer. So really from inception to completion, we're fully involved in the process and have the bandwidth and capability and staff here locally to execute on that. And we've assembled a best-in-class project team, with the majority of the team being headquartered in St. Louis. And we have representatives from a number of these consultants online, and specifically CBB. I think we'll bring over Lee Cannon at some point to talk about the traffic impact. We did an extensive traffic analysis here, taking into consideration all of the proposed developments, and think we have a solution there in terms of alleviating some of the traffic, or at least contributing toward alleviating some of that traffic via monetary contribution to improvements at the Price and Olive intersection. So here's a sampling of our Missouri projects. You'll see some office in there, some industrial, and a number of multifamily projects. And we'll jump over to some true benchmark projects that we've completed in Missouri. So this is Citizen Park in the Central West End. These slides will really just show you the quality in architecture and finishes that we incorporate into every project and really make it its own from a design perspective to fit into the community. So this is at Lyndall and Euclid in Central West End, 12-story, very tight site, 3 levels of below grade parking. So really urban infill project here, very successful project. This was 217 units with 10,000 square feet of retail. The next project here is Ceylon Apartments in Clayton, 120 units, 5 stories, more similar to the caliber in terms of height and exterior to what we'll be developing in Olivet. But went with a more modern approach here on the interior, as you can see. But this delivered in 2017 has been an immensely successful project and leased up on schedule. And the third project is Wesley on Broadway, which is in the Westport neighborhood of Kansas City, that delivered at the end of last year, has also been immensely successful, but just again points to the attributes of the architecture and interior finishes and the quality in which we deliver those. So moving on from there, we'll get into the project description itself. No need to spend a ton of time on this. Carlos did an excellent job here, but this is just another aerial showing the site in question, 23 individual homes, all individually under contract with willing and motivated sellers. You can go to the next slide, Joe. Here's our conceptual massing. So this is, again, 5-story building. You'll see we've taken great care to orient the building away from the residential as much as possible and making that front door on Price, off of Price Road. So keeping the legs of the U, if you will, are the only 2 sections that face the residential on Hilltop. Next slide, Joe. So here's a site plan, and I'll get into some of the specific influence that was had after our community meetings and PCDC meetings as well. But just overall, so 207 units, as Carlos mentioned, 281 surface parking stalls, with approximately 50 of those being covered. And the building will include, a ton of amenities, resort style pool, state-of-the-art fitness, work from home space, club room, large courtyard, as you can see there. And in addition, on the right side of the plan there, you'll see a 6-foot high site-proof fence. And that actually sits at the edge of the curb line for the parking, not at the property line. So that was a discussion on the previous proposed project. And Carlos said it's fairly common to put it at the property line. We've taken a different approach here and determined through conversations, it made sense to put it at the property line, at the curb line of the parking. And then through input from PCDC, we're able to increase our setback from 10 feet to 19 feet on the east side. So from that site-proof fence, we've got 19 feet to the neighboring property owners' property lines on Hilltop. And that was able to further improve the buffer and provide more open space. And also we've got a variety of landscaping there, including fast-growing pine trees that will provide additional screening. So that's really a flavor there of the additional landscaping that will be provided. You can see that we're taking great care to include enhanced landscaping there to try to create that additional buffer. And then the surface parking, you'll note we have multiple pavement textures and colors, along with parking islands to really break up that parking into modular sections or pods. And really the intent there is to add some variety and depth, along with enhanced pavement texture at the entrance to really offset that entry. And then in addition, there'll be landscaping within those islands as well, just additional layer to further improve the aesthetics. So as Carlos mentioned, the public space along Alice, we really found this to be an excellent opportunity to provide a linear park in this area. So we've included a sidewalk there with some pedestrian nodes that will connect to a pathway through to the development itself to give access to the future Centennial Greenway that'll run along Price. So there'll be seating areas, enhanced landscaping, and you'll see that in some of the renderings along Alice there. And in addition, as mentioned, we are coordinating with the city and have agreed to install a sidewalk to connect Price and Hilltop. So running the entire east-west along Alice Place to just further provide connectivity for pedestrian integration within the community there. And you'll see that we show 2 curb cuts, one on Alice Place and one on Price Road. And we're in the final negotiations, as Carlos mentioned, great insight or hindsight for the city in terms of, providing that accessibility when the ordinance was approved for CVS to allow for future access there. So we're negotiating with CVS currently. We are in the final throes of that negotiation and are close to finalizing that. So we're feeling confident that we'll be able to get that curb cut and we'll install that road permanently once the city confirms its ability to offer public access there. And we've also initiated conversations with Great Rivers Greenway as it relates to the Centennial Greenway and are extremely excited about collaborating with them. It was an excellent initial kickoff call with them, so we look forward to continuing conversations with them. And I think as it relates to traffic, we have had a traffic study completed. We're happy to promote Lee Cannon if there's any questions, maybe at the end of our presentation here to talk about that specifically. But what we've negotiated with the city is that we are willing to contribute, make a monetary contribution toward future improvements at the North Price and Olive intersection to create an additional turn lane there. Maybe Barbara Carlos can speak to that specifically, but I think they're underway in studying those potential improvements, and we look forward to contributing toward those improvements. We aren't the cause of the failing intersection there. It was already failing regardless of our project. We are acknowledged that we are making it slightly worse, and it is only slightly worse with our increased traffic. But we do acknowledge that and are willing to contribute monetarily toward those improvements with the amount that we are impacting that intersection. So Joe, with that, I'll turn it over to you. We don't have our architect, Gary Schubert, with us this evening. So Joe's going to be acting as architect just to provide a high-level overview of the architectural elements in detail, just to give you a flavor for what we're proposing here.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Good evening. So we'll start with this rendering here from Alice looking southwest at the building. One of the first things you'll notice when looking at the building is how the brick anchors the building. And it does that by bookending each of the elevations with 3 stories of brick at the corners. And then we still continue and use a solid base of brick that's carried across the first level. Second thing that you'll probably notice is this blue accent color that we've incorporated into the side of the recessed balcony areas. This is a more subtle design element that emerges and becomes more noticeable as you kind of make your way around the building. The upper areas of the facade are made up of a white composite siding material and wide battens. And then that brightness is contrasted by this darker siding material that's used within the balcony areas. And these mini recessed balcony areas create an undulating roof profile. And so that combined with the projecting balconies creates the right amount of depth and dimension for the building. And then looking more at the foreground of this rendering, you'll see a mock-up of our monument signage here, right next to our Alice Place entry. And then you can also see the linear park here that has been discussed by both Carlos and Ryan. So here's one of those nodes, which is a great spot for people to take a break while they're on a walk or bike ride, or just sit outside to enjoy the outdoors. And lastly, this rendering does a good job of showing the level of landscaping that will be installed. Here's a look at our front entrance. So this revised entry facade features wood, and that's going to be a common thread that we're going to be using at all entry points. And we really like the way that warms up the facade. So our entry signage is a wood cantilevered canopy that is capped at the roofline up here by a wood material trellis, or eyebrow feature, as we'd call it. And this eyebrow will create dimensional interest at our entry with the trellis elements, but also as the sun is moving and the shadow patterns are changing, it'll create a lot of interest that way as well. And then lastly, on this one, as Ryan mentioned, we're using some stamped concrete in front of the entrance. So that enhanced pavement combined with some additional landscaping and some really nice light bollards are going to create an entry plaza feel here at the front of the building. Here's another angle from the south looking back towards the entry. This rendering gives a much better look at the darker siding material, as well as the way the sun kind of reacts with this brick that we plan on using. You can also see where we're using the wood here at multiple entry points, as well as the blue accent color from another angle, and the way that there's some movement in the roof line here from this angle as well. This is a view from Price Road, and we wanted to show this one because it really just gives you a feel for the entire building as a whole and just its entire mass. So wanted to show this one as well. This is from Price, which as we've discussed, most people are going to be seeing the building from Price as it's most heavily trafficked. And one thing worth noting on this rendering is this is not representative of what will be installed along our entry off of Price. There'll be a sidewalk and some really nice landscaping comparable to what was shown along Alice. This is just more of a preliminary rendering. So feel free to reference the landscape plan, which outlines exactly what will be planted there, as well as a sidewalk. And then here's a southern view of the eastern reaching wings. And as Ryan said, we received some really quality feedback throughout the planning commission process. And during that, we made the decision to add these perforated mesh panels at the 10 balconies that are closest to the existing homes near our eastern property line. And that's in an effort to ensure that privacy continues to be a top priority throughout this development. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Ryan to wrap us up.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I think it's worth reiterating, and Carlos mentioned on it as well, our development objectives here, and they're squarely in line with the city's adopted dynamic sense of place, excuse me, as its strategic plan. And those 4 areas of community development, economic development, public space, and transportation connections. And again, this development directly achieves all of those objectives. The community development through housing mix, we've got a variety of housing options and price points to attract a wide demographic. And in addition to that, the live, work, play lifestyle that residents are seeking these days, they have the ability to enjoy the resort style amenities within the development, as well as the public connections that are provided here to work and social activities that are in the area. And the economic development, the development scale of the project itself will increase the density and the design quality while transforming the character of the neighborhood. And that's really what's happening here along this corridor, is a true transformation. And the site that it currently contains 23 homes that are 70 years old and around 30% vacant. And that's where it's begging for transformation. And as Laura mentioned, it's been years in the making here. And the economic impact on top of that, we had an independent tax impact analysis done, completed by a third-party consultant. And the development alone will create significant increased tax benefit to the city of Olivet directly of around $1.7 million over a 20-year period, and to the Ladue School District alone of approximately $4.4 million over that same projected 20-year period. And that tax impact analysis has been included in your packets. Public spaces, improved connectivity. The public space along Alice Place will increase the accessibility, connectivity, and integration for residents in the northeast quadrant of Olivet here that have really been somewhat isolated for a number of years. So we're trying to do our part to integrate them into the community from a pedestrian standpoint. And then transportation connections. This is really what makes this project Olivet, and our ability to establish community identity and integration and activation through this pedestrian pathway and integration with the Centennial Greenway that's here. Not to mention the expansion of the sidewalk along Alice Place to connect Hilltop and Price. And then in addition, the contribution that we're making toward the improvements at Price and North Price and Olive to enhance the vehicular movements in that particular intersection as well. So we feel the time is right for this development to continue to support that transformation. And it's right for the community and the homeowners that we're under contract with, that have been through this so many times before with other proposed projects. So that concludes our presentation. We may want to promote Lee Cannon with CVB to answer any specific questions as it relates to the traffic impact study, if that's necessary. But I think I've addressed those high levels. So if there's any additional questions we can answer in general, we're happy to do so.
We left.
Oh, ha ha. There we go. All right.
Hey, Lee.
Hello, hello. I'm Lee Cannon, principal and traffic engineer with CBB, and I did complete the traffic study. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, or if the council wishes, I give a brief overview of the traffic study.
Mayor? Do you have any questions for him? Do you have any questions on the traffic study?
Actually, I would like to hear some of your traffic study.
Okay. So it's important to understand what a traffic impact study looks to do. First of all, we look at the existing traffic conditions as they exist, the physical roadway, and also the vehicles using the roadway system. We establish baseline conditions, and then we look at the proposed development and how much traffic that development would be expected to generate. In this case, you have a 207 unit apartment, but you also have some homes that are being removed, and apartments tend to generate less peak hour trips than single family homes. So we're going to have about 55 additional vehicles per hour in the morning commuter peak hour on a weekday, and about 65 additional peak hour trips in the afternoon commuter peak hour. With the additional trips, we compare the operating conditions with and without the proposed development. And generally what we found was that the existing conditions are congested, especially at Price and Olive, as well as Hilltop and Olive, due to heavy traffic along Olive and limited amount of green time provided at the traffic signals for those movements. But this development really doesn't change those conditions a whole lot. So in a traffic impact study, we're looking to see how does this development change or impact traffic flows to determine whether or not some mitigation measures should be put in place. Overall, we found that the issue being the existing conditions and congestion, a single developer or one entity really can't go about making significant improvements to the roadway system at Price and Olive. However, we did identify a project that can be moved forward, which would be adding an additional southbound lane of traffic on Price at Olive to provide for dual southbound left turn lanes. It's my understanding that the developer is working with the city staff on a contribution to that overall project and moving that project forward. Some of the other issues that we look at as part of the traffic study are safety and pedestrian flow and site circulation. And some of the things that you see on the plan are reflective of issues that have been addressed during the development of the plan in coordination with the traffic study. An all-way stop will need to be maintained at Irvington and Alice, where the site has their secondary access point. That's primarily due to the traffic on the north leg trying to get out on the Olive doesn't have adequate sight distance. It's not really a matter of the south leg serving this site, but it will need to be maintained as an always stop for safe sight distance. The access to Price is critical. We do agree that Price Road should be the front door for the project for traffic traveling to and from Olive. And then last, we did work with the developer and the city staff to address appropriate pedestrian connections in the neighborhood and parts of those recommendations and agreements were that a sidewalk would be placed along the south side of Alice Place, extending and connecting in both east and west directions, and that the Price Road access would have a pedestrian connection out to the existing sidewalks along the east side of Price, and that the development will coordinate as the plans for the Centennial Greenway continue to be developed to provide for a safe vehicular crossing of the Centennial Greenway and the previously afforded cross-access agreement across the CVS property. With that, I would be happy to answer. Oh, I should mention one more thing, and that is our traffic study did look at the traffic impacts of the yet to be developed Olive Gateway project on the south side that Mr. Yawitz was just presenting recently in the meeting, and then also the Novus project in University City. So we took into account the known development projects that will be adding traffic to the background traffic prior to this site, going under construction. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any specific questions that you might have about the traffic study.
Does anyone have any questions on the council?
I have a question of clarity from Joe Kelly. I think, Mr. Kelly, you were the one that, or maybe it was you, Mr. Carlisle, might have been Ryan. I just want to make sure I heard this right. You had an outside expert look at the financial aspects of this, and over a 20-year period, you're saying that Olivet will reap 1.7 million and that the Ladue School District will reap 1.4 million over the 20-year period. Is that correct? Did I hear that right?
1.7 million directly to Olivet is what's projected over a 20-year period, and then 4.4 million to the Ladue School District over that same period.
And that's and that's a conservative projection or what?
It is a projection. Well, it's all a projection. It's estimated, right? It's taking into consideration the what's there today, and then what we're building from a multifamily and the additional taxes that will be paid. So I think it's a who knows what the assessor is going to do,
Sure.
Quite frankly, right? So it's hard for us to determine, but we trust in our outside consultants that they have a good handle on what those taxes will be. So we feel that that's a conservative, I would call that more middle of the road to conservative estimation
Okay. Middle of the road conservative. Okay.
of the taxes
Okay. So that
and the impact.
Okay, and that would average out to 85,000 a year for the city and 220,000 a year for Ladue school districts. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. So so we should go in close session.
Did you, I don't think we closed the public hearing.
Okay. We're closing. Ladies and gentlemen, do you have any questions or comments, concerns? Mr. Trail, please speak your mind.
And I apologize to extend the lengthiness of the hearing, but we've continued to hear the word traffic and its impacts, and we did take that seriously through the process, and being that we have a public hearing, it's an opportunity to inform the public of the ongoing discussions regarding the traffic. I think it's important to kind of note, we did engage Mr. Cannon's firm to do what they termed as a sketch planning study. And that sketch planning study, and I noted it, but I didn't reference it beyond this, and this discussion is kind of taking its own form, took a look at the existing conditions between I-170 and Dealman north of Olive. So that included the Arrowhead, Hilltop, Collingwood neighborhoods, the Dealman Industrial Park, Price Industrial Park, Elbring Mobile, and all that. And also to make the public aware that several years ago, we also did a corridor study of the Olive Boulevard corridor in there because we recognize, traffic along that corridor, depending on what time of the day you go out there, can be pretty horrendous to you can skip across without any problems in there. But, these things vary. Through that sketch planning study, there was 2 goals that I think that were important. We looked at what do we have and what do we control, because sometimes what we have doesn't necessarily mean we control it, and what we control doesn't necessarily mean we can have it. So there are 2 distinct things that this study took a look at. And that gave us an ability to kind of identify our realm of influence, which is one of the council goals about being in a leadership level and influencing what's going on and not sitting back and letting our adjacent communities take the lead or do what they're doing. So in this study, we engaged with Mr. Cannon, not only to look at the traffic impact study that was done for this PDD, nor just the Olive Crossing impact study, as he noted. He also looked at what is going on in the University City side. And again, in conjunction with that, don't just take a look at what's going on now, but what are the potentials 20 years from now? So we took this broad aspect or look on this to get a better understanding of, again, what do we have and what can we control? Olive Boulevard is a state highway. The best thing that the city of Olivet can do is to be proactive and to manage that corridor, because the state, essentially MoDOT, will dictate to us what's going to get signalized, how much time is going to be allotted, and such. But this puts us in a better negotiating position to have these broader discussions with MoDOT, to have these broader discussions with developers like the Opus Group, in hopes of improving the traffic impact, not just on the Olive Boulevard corridor, but also in what we termed as this northeast quadrant of the Hilltop, Arrowhead, and the Industrial Park neighborhoods. So we looked at that, and we looked at what intersections we have the ability to make improvements, especially for our residents, about how being able to get out onto the corridor, not just get the people going along the corridor, but how they take a look at that and what improvements and what are those costs, and everything has a cost to it. And I think we've set up a roadmap for us to kind of move forward through this in the future, both by doing, initiating projects ourselves, or when developments occur, that we're set and we're in line to have these discussions up front. And we did with the Opus Group, and we appreciate their cooperation in this process. Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry about.
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm trying to understand, if you add 1 lane of traffic coming out at Price, you're taking out 23 homes, of which 30% are not occupied currently. You're replacing it with 207 apartments. I understand they won't have as many vehicles probably per unit as the houses, but I don't know how that 1 lane of traffic is going to mitigate that volume. And my biggest concern is, for years, I've been begging for that street that sits just to the west of Price, which I cannot think of the name of right now, that we use to get out, go west on Olive, for them not to allow left-hand turns during rush hour when they're trying to turn on to Olive eastbound. And we already know there's a bottleneck getting to 170. So how is it not going to just push the bottleneck to the west 1 block, with more people going out that way where there's no light?
Thank you for your question. Okay, at this moment, we're going to close the public hearing.
And I'm gonna make the Opus, unless the council has any more questions for Opus, I was gonna move them to attendees. Okay,
No questions.
thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Okay, we're going to close the public hearing. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor. But first, I just wanted to make a quick note of the fact of this easement that's allowing this driveway. I was on, when CVS came to town, I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that was a long time ago. And we had the forethought to request that easement then. And I just want to point out that that was due to the fact of the strategic plan, and it has come to fruition after many years. So I just, again, want to point out how that we have been following that over time. All right, I will make my motion. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Bill 2953, an ordinance to create a planned development district by approving the vacation of streets known as Irving Court and Ryman Court, approving the consolidation of 4.926 acres to be known as Olivet Apartments Boundary Adjustment Plat, rezoning 4.926 acres of property to be known as Olivet Apartments Boundary Adjustment Plat from single family residential district to MU Gateway I-170 Olive Boulevard Mixed Use Gateway District, and approving a development plan and designating a planned development district to be known as the Irvington Ryman Olivet Apartments.
I will second that.
Councilmember Carl,
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman.
Yes.
Chairman Weil.
I'm going to have to vote no, but I'd like to explain part of my decision. I think that everything about the project and all of the enhancements around the area are wonderful, but when it comes down to the mixed use gateway district, I feel adamant that we need more condos or condominiums or villas, not apartments.
Mayor.
Yes.
Motion passed by action of the Olivet City Council. Bill number 2953 becomes ordinance number 2726. Item number 8 is bill number 2955, an ordinance to amend on-site detention requirements for single-family houses under section 422.080, single-family residential development, being part of chapter 422 stormwater management of title 4 land use of the Olivet Municipal Code. First reading.
Mayor, again, my name's Carlos Trejo. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development for the City of Olivet. This item will have a public hearing and we'll go into more detail of this draft ordinance. It was just a request for the first reading. Public hearing will be scheduled for the July 27th council meeting. And just in a quick summary of what the intent of this ordinance does is that when we adopted our stormwater standards, we require in an infill situation that when a house is torn down, the new house has to require their own on-site detention. And that has been very extremely helpful. And I'd like to say that we've seen some positive impacts by doing this, like we had in this past storm, where the level and volume of calls regarding stormwater issues, not that they don't exist, has been reduced, at least through what we see in my department. But what this would do, that when a subdivision in itself that's been reviewed by the Metropolitan Sewer District, and that the Metropolitan Sewer District requires a subdivision detention basin that is sized on all the improvements of the subdivision, that includes the streets and the sidewalks, but also includes the driveways, driveway turnarounds, the house footprint and patios, that requiring the infill on-site detention is what we would term, you're double dipping. You're asking for additional stormwater volume to be provided into where a stormwater detention basin for the subdivision as a whole has been calculated to meet all the demands of the subdivision, including the average home size. So the commission did review this ordinance and supported changes to chapter 422 based on the conditions that are outlined in this ordinance, that would be outlined in this ordinance. And that's to ensure that the subdivision in itself was required and calculated the detention amount for their basin. That notations are put in the final plat and the indentures, and that proper easements are illustrated, and that this would only apply to the initial house constructed in the subdivision. After that, it no longer applies. It would be applicable like to every other property in the city. So be glad to answer any specific questions. Again, public hearing and a more thorough review would be provided at our next meeting.
Does council have any questions?
So, Mr. Trejo, I was going to ask you that question. I'm glad that you brought that up. I just want the public to understand, again, PCDC had the conversation that after the home is built, if the home chooses to do an addition or increase its size, then it could be under review for additional stormwater runoff implementation on the property. And I want the public to understand that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Item number 9, bill number 2956, an ordinance to amend section 500.100 permitted hours of construction, being part of chapter 500 building regulations of Title 5 building and construction of the Olivet Municipal Code. First reading.
Mr. Trejo, you have the floor.
Mayor, again, my name is Carlos Trejo. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development for the City of Olivet. Tonight is a proposed amendment to Chapter 500, our building regulations, which is not part of the land use code. So this is for the first meeting and a first reading, and would be scheduled before the council at its next meeting on July 27th. And what this would do is recognize it's the current changes of the weather impacts that we're having. A couple of weeks ago, when we had some extreme weather conditions in which the National Weather Service issued heat advisory, we had about 8+ calls about whether it was concerns, complaints, or requests regarding early construction. And this is not associated to any one development. And this is not associated to just commercial properties. There was a residential driveway, there was a residential roofing that was going on, and then 2 larger developments, both the Gateway and the Oliver, that were trying to address this issue. And both have been cordial in doing that. That being said, we looked at opportunities to consider and had a discussion with the council about extending working hours. And we looked at what other communities surrounding Olivet were doing, and also had discussions about their policies. So that's going beyond just looking at the ordinance, but looking at how the implementation and policies were going on. And in this case, staff recommended to the council to extending the working hours an additional 30 minutes only, and that is only when the National Weather Service, which is a recognized agency, issues a heat advisory. Generally, a heat advisory is issued within 12 hours before the onset of extremely dangerous heat conditions. For the St. Louis metropolitan area, the general rule of thumb is when the expected temperatures, this is the expected heat index, so that's the temperature plus humidity, is going to be between 100, be around 105 degrees, and range between 100 to 104 degrees for 4 consecutive days. So there's a defined process for that, both for what is a heat index and what is considered a heat advisory. And again, there's a 12-hour window of that a notification is provided by the National Weather Service. And again, this is looking at equitable standards in terms of how this is applied both to our property owners that are doing improvements and those that are doing those improvements for them, and looking at those conditions. We are cognizant that yes, there's another part of the day, the evening, but remember, it is that the heat peak takes place in that afternoon. It doesn't go down right away after sunset or anything. And the opportunity to have a viable working conditions is earlier on, but we're sensitive to the nature that that's early, and that's why we're recommending an additional 30 minutes only on those occasions when the National Weather Service issues a heat advisory.
Would that be limited also to only the month of July or only the month of July and August? I mean,
no, because again,
It's triggered by the heat advisory.
by the heat advisory.
And you weren't here when this was a workshop discussion, and the information that was provided in the research that the city gave to the council was no other city really has done this, is my understanding. This is, our hours are 7 to 7. This is a request for 30 minutes, which would mean 6:30 in the morning. So it's only a half an hour addition. You know,
We can research like when heat advisories, what is that window of heat advisories that have been issued in the past couple of years? If that's helpful. The information, the National Weather Service website has lots of info on that, and we can get a better idea of what that scope is, or how many events were outside of like a typical summer hour.
that would be good. I'd appreciate that because I'm not interested in what happened in 2012. I'm interested in what's happening now.
Any other questions? How about our distinguished guest? Any questions? Okay.
All right, item number 10, bill number 2957, an ordinance authorizing execution of a Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission Transportation Alternatives Funds Program Agreement for construction of a section of the Centennial Greenway.
Oh, that's me.
City Manager, you have the floor.
I'm Carlos Trejo. Oh, no, wait. No, thank you. Well, this is the first reading for the execution of the agreement with the state of Missouri for the grant funding for $1 million funding for the section of the Centennial Greenway that runs from Dealman Road to Warson Park, not through Warson Park, but to Warson Park. So generally through the Indian Meadows Park. And so this is just the first reading. You'll come back. This is a standard grant. This is a standard agreement with the state. While this is our first TAP grant, they're very similar to the STP grants, which we have had. That's all I got.
That's all you have to say about that.
I don't have a presentation or nothing.
Does anybody on the, yeah. Does anyone on the council have any questions? Okay. Next, please.
Item number 11, OMCI application.
Mr. McGregor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Bruce McGregor, Olivet Public Works Director. About a year ago or so, we talked about the MSD OMCI district and a share of tax revenue, stormwater tax revenue being shared with the municipalities. This is the first time the city's had an opportunity to take part in a grant of this nature. And we went through some steps after we found out about the potential to use the funds. We have two areas that are in Olivet, the Deer Creek watershed and what I'll just call the River de Pere watershed, because it is the headwaters, even though it goes through, they identify it on MSD documents as University City branch of River de Pere. If we scroll down a little bit into the GIS map, you'll see that we have brainstormed throughout the town of target areas where we know we've had some localized flooding areas that could be potential projects for utilization for this money. And we decided to target our first sort of focus areas between Dolores and Price Road and off of in between Lisa Drive and Nantucket and segment 8, which is between Ramsgate and Stony Side subdivision. We did some visiting with municipalities in the area that did a lot of stormwater work and spent some time talking with the city of Frontenac, which has really been doing stormwater work for probably about 15 years now or longer in residential neighborhoods, trying to mitigate localized stormwater impacts and flooding and so on. Their engineering firm EDM is on the LPA on-call list that we go to as pre-vetted or pre-approved by the requirements for a qualified base selection. And we met with their principal, with Len, and we spent some time in the field looking at these three first focus areas. And Lee is, or I mean, sorry, Lee, I get Lee and Len mixed up here. Len does a lot of work in the stormwater. He does floodplain analysis and anyway, they have a very good procedure for documenting and reporting the impacts and the scoring of how these improvements can help the community. So he prepared a couple studies for us for these areas. We determined that because the Deer Creek area is smaller, we don't have as much available funds, that we want to ask MSD to hold those for us to accumulate 2 years worth of funds. So we'll have enough to do some design. But we do in the River des Peres area have enough to begin a project between Dolores and Llewellyn. And the photos are attached in the end that sort of show that primitive, stream area. And interestingly, this is the water that starts upstream of Price Crossing, where you see them doing the work there, installing the new large underground reinforced concrete pipe. That channel goes behind Starbucks and Sugar Fire, goes behind those subdivisions and under Dolores, and then connects to stormwater infrastructure on Llewellyn and continues up a little bit further upstream to Olive. So there you can see here, this is a Gabion basket, stream segment, and that is to the east of Dolores. And the area we're focusing on is actually on the east side, which is more of a primitive stream area. If you sort of scroll, let's see, I'm not sure, up and down a little bit. That's part of the Gabion Channel. Let's see, was it the other direction? Yeah, this is the area. So that little, it's an oblong reinforced concrete culvert under Dolores. And we're focusing between there and to the east to Llewellyn for this first area design. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody had any, or and you can see where we've had some property, this area where you've had erosion of property behind the houses, either on Tess Avenue or. So again, this is purely the authorization to make the application to MSD. We feel we have a good application, but of course they have to go through their commission because of the amount for approval. So, and we would get a reimbursement.
Does any of the council have any questions? Okay.
Actually, I do. I noticed that I thought your number 5 on your map, wasn't that the trail? Is that the trail?
No, it is not. There's a concrete improved channel between I-170 over behind Bond Hills, and then it turns into a natural stream between Dealman, moving east,
Right.
and then it continues as a natural channel. And further to the east, we have had flooding impact where the channel has become overloaded,
Right.
and those houses had significant impacts there.
Right, floodplain.
Yeah, well, it is a floodplain, yeah, and
So I guess my question is, isn't the Lindley relief?
so the Lindley relief is sanitary.
Yeah.
So what they're doing there is they're increasing the capacity of the sanitary sewers so that if there is a surcharge from stormwater, the pipes can handle it and not rely on sanitary sewer overflows, which were outfalls into the public streams, which is of course a pollutant. And while that was a design standard in the 40s, it is not EPA compliant anymore. So this is all part of the consent decree with MSD and the EPA to eliminate sanitary overflows. And Project Clear is sort of a sister part of that, because they're trying to eliminate stormwater entrances into the sanitary system. Back in the day, they used to connect everything, your patio drains, your gutters, everything went into the stormwater. And they're really trying to get these unnecessary connections out of the sanitary system.
So as you've identified it, it would be additional to that, but it would be stormwater.
It would be purely stormwater for analysis of the channel and the maintenance, and what we can do on our city side to make sure it functions as efficiently as possible. There's a culvert or a box culvert under I-170 And there is a legacy arched culvert under the railroad, well, what was the railroad tracks, which is now the Greenway on the east side of I-170. We have a feeling that those were the choke points that caused the big damage with some trees that were obstructing those when we did a post-event inspection. These trees were lodged in the side of it, and we think that that obstructed a lot of the flow, causing that back charge upstream. So, but those are all future areas. Our idea was to start getting these areas mapped out, and as funds become available, have something, you know, ready as a focus area. And then also, you know, it'd be a grand vision to be able to try to measure the benefit of all the new construction requirements with the underground detention and so on. But that is probably a cost prohibitive study because of the level of analysis that's really required to get that granular.
Now, these are really our funds. It's like we said to MSD, no, we're not giving you that percentage you want us to give. We want that money and we want to decide how we're using it.
Last fall,
Yeah.
we sent in a letter saying we do not want to, you know, release those funds back to MSD. We would like to take advantage of that. And then now is our time to, applications actually due in August. So we want to get this application turned in and ready for them to send to their board for approval. Because of the amount, they just can't do an administrative approval. It has to go to the board.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I entertain a motion.
No, this is in this first reading?
No.
This isn't an ordinance. We're just asking for approval actually for the application.
Is there language or just?
I have it here.
Okay, I will make a motion to authorize the city staff to submit an OMCI reimbursement application for engineering services related to stormwater improvements between Llewellyn Lane and Dolores Avenue.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Full council.
Councilmember Carl,
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman.
Yes.
Chairman Weil,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
motion passed. Item number 12 is the Public Works truck chassis purchase.
Thank you. Well, yes. We are asking for approval to purchase a truck. GW 6419 is a 2009 diesel here on the top. And while I probably should have included a photo of the engine bay, I think there are 6 or 7 radiators packed in the front of that truck. And it is a really compact engine space for such a large diesel engine. We had a number of issues with it last fall and through the winter. And it really sort of said, you know, we think we're in a good sweet spot to recover, you know, a good sale price for it. And we should just, you know, think about replacing it before it really turns into a complicated repair. You know, getting into the engine bay of that is you have to take everything apart and it could really get quite costly. So what we are doing this time is we're asking to replace this truck with actually a gasoline engine instead of a diesel. The emissions requirements come in twofold. There's a diesel exhaust filter, which has been around quite a while. And then there's another one called selective catalyst reduction. And that's a secondary filter on the system. They're really designed to work on the highway. And there are sometimes we just have to have the diesels, like on the bigger trucks down below. But it is just a maintenance difficulty because we do everything at 20 miles an hour or less. And in the winter time, you know, we just can't get the engines up to speed so that the regeneration of the diesels can clean. We drive the big trucks once a month on the highway. We take them on a loop to sort of, you know, clear the pipes, so to speak. But they are a complication for our type of service here. And just to be clear, this is only for the chassis. We will go out to bid for the bed and the plow equipment, the hydraulics, all that stuff later. Because of the equipment shortages now, we wanted to get this order in as soon as possible. I think we'd be lucky to get it here by January, from what we're hearing with all the backups, but, you know, we'll try to get it in service as soon as possible.
Is that pretty standard for a truck to only have 27,000 miles after?
Well, we do hours is a better description for what we do here, because it is very typical for Public Works. Because everything we do is driving in little circles, you know, for at low miles per hour for hours and hours at a time. So, and then the other thing you have to think about as well is we operate in a very caustic environment. We wash, wax, clean these trucks religiously during the winter time. And we do have the benefit of being able to park all vehicles, winter trucks, inside the equipment bay at Public Works, which really helps for their longevity. But most Public Works agencies are looking at 7 years for replacement. And we are able to get more than that out of there, out of the vehicles, because of our maintenance and the care we take to keep them clean and keep the salt from building up on the trucks.
If I could ask you, you really kind of answered a question that I was going to ask. And that's about diesel. I mean, I'm familiar with other companies that turned in their diesels because they really were a problem. And you mentioned that we still have other vehicles that are diesel. So, you know, is it the thought of eventually going back to gasoline for everything, or why would you?
So a couple things, and we're really sort of digressing here, but the biggest problem we have with the gasoline engines is the type of hydraulic drive. So there are basically a clutch pump which operates off of the serpentine belts, or that sort of setup on there, which creates a lot of engine draw. And then you have a PTO drive pump, which comes directly off the transmission. What we found with previous smaller trucks with gasoline engines with the clutch pump, that when the operators were driving on, you know, running in the spreader and the plow equipment at low RPMs, the trucks were stalling out because of the diesels and gas engines just operate differently. So what you have to do is, on top of watching the plow and the spreader, you have to drop the truck into neutral, double pedal, so you can keep the RPMs up so that you don't stall out when you're going around the cul-de-sac or wherever you're going, and then re-engage into drive when you make the turnaround. Otherwise you stall out and go on. So we went with the diesel with this truck because of the problems we were having previously. Now the new one, Ford has standard a PTO drive. So this will draw on the engine differently than a clutch pump. Which, you know, sits in the engine. It's just a much better operation for us when we can get the clutch pumps. Now it depends on who, you know, whether we've got a Cummins or a Ford diesel, or who's putting it together, whether, you know, the Allison transmissions of Ford, you know, whether we can get, you know, the PTO pumps. One year the truck was so new, they didn't have the correct connector to go from the clutch drive to the hydraulic pump. And, you know, so we had to have one fabricated to make that connection, because the pump manufacturer, Muncie, didn't have it. Yeah, I think it was Muncie. They didn't have it yet. Anyway, that's a whole lot that you probably.
Are there any other questions from the council? All right, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make the motion to authorize the purchase of a 2020 Ford F-350 4x4 as outlined in the attached Bill Manchin's Ford letter, not to exceed $36,601.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, can we poll the council?
Councilmember Carl.
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman.
Yes.
Chairman Weil.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
I told him as it was getting later, he could have asked for 2 and you guys would have approved it.
About right.
Item number. Item number 13 is appointment to commissions and committees.
As the council is aware, you have asked most of the everyone actually to re-up this year. Everyone did accept your invitation. And so the slate before you is for all the commissions and committee appointments for this year. These do not include the current vacancy on the Park and Recreation Commission, which just occurred over the last month or two, and the vacancy on the Planning Commission, and the vacancy for alternate on the ZBA. The board, you can take these one at a time, or you could approve the slate of candidates as presented.
Does anyone have an objection to any candidate? Can we do them all at once? Slate? Okay. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the slate of candidates as presented. Makes it simple.
Second.
Councilmember Carl,
Yes.
Councilmember Waldman.
Yeah.
Chairman Weil,
Yes.
Mayor. Motion passed.
I would just like to take note of the brevity from the city manager tonight as opposed to the people she supervises.
Item number 14 is hearing from citizens, part 2.
Come on, Mr. King.
There's no hands up on Zoom.
Item number 15.
With good reason.
There-
We do not have the minutes. We will have the minutes from June 22nd at your next meeting.
So on to item 16, which is the city attorney's report.
Mr. Mayor, Council, the Attorney General has requested an additional 30 days to file its opening brief in the free speech case. And that is now due on August 12th. Our response would be due in the neighborhood of September 12th. Then they would have approximately 15 days after that to file a reply, with oral argument probably to be scheduled in October or November. That's where we are right now on that. I have nothing further to report, and I do not believe that we have the need for a closed session this evening.
While you're doing this oral argument with the Supreme Court or the appellate court?
This is in the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court, okay.
Yeah.
So moved.
I will second that. My